Egypt, which reflect the high prices of food. These high prices not reaching the normal estimation over the half of the population. I mean that the corrupt class in that regard not only increased its acquisition of wealth, but also they take a substantial portion of these of their assets to smuggle outside, to smuggle abroad. As Professor Emmert said, you can see about the latest reports about the Mubarak wealth and his family, and most of them right now, they will going to be under investigation. We are not sure, no one can be sure that Mubarak will be going to be under investigation or not, because maybe we're going to suspect that there is going to be a deal between the army and Mubarak himself concerning not to be subjected to the criminal investigation because of this money and all of the corrupt acts and stuff like that. You know that people, corrupt people doing that by borrowing loans from public banks which connected to the state, corrupt officials, and also private banks as well. And then they try to substituting their public funds by smuggling them and then substitute these public funds from their assets. Mubarak tried to cover his scheme by making the Egyptian Central Bank the grantors of the private investment loans in order to make a secret about the inflated investment projects. I mean, other acts of economic corruption had been done by this corrupt class. Also, one of the economic, political, corrupt phenomena, you're going to see that in the latest 2010 parliamentary elections, maybe it's more than 90% from the national ruling Democratic Party win the seats by using, Mubarak used the police force, and the illegitimate acts had been done within his officers, and he tried to make only 25% for the general participant to participate in the parliamentary elections. He wanted to support the National Democratic Party in order to support his corrupt class and corrupt regime and the acts of corruption. And right now, you're going to see that a lot of pendings right now or challenges are pending upon the Court of Cassation in order to check the stability of the candidates, members in the parliament. But the good thing that the army play a good role, and I can here take Professor Bassiouni quote that he said that army play an important role with a good neighbor policy. Army never ever acted against people, but they are still generals. They act in their honorable and patriotic ways, but their priorities is just to, you know, keep order and stability, not democracy or justice. These days, there are some possible civilian candidates for the presidency. Maybe most of you knows that maybe one of them is Dr. Mohamed al-Baradei. He's served as a former president of International Agency for Atomic Power. He is recommended to be the president of Egypt. He is not very well known by the most of the Egyptian classes because he spent most of his life out of Egypt, but he's one of the good intellectuals in Egypt, and he's acting in a dignified way during the revolution itself. The other one recommended to be the president is Amr Moussa, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs in Egypt, and he also right now is the Secretary General of the Arab League. He's popular and common to most of the Egyptians. I'm not sure if Amr Moussa will gonna be liked by the United States or Israel as well, because one of the important thing I gonna clarify here that when the army starts ruling the country, they issuing 5 communiques, and this one of the important communiques here, and the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces announced that they will only gonna stay in the existence of the authority just for 6 months. Other thing, they suspend the constitution, they dissolve the 2 houses of parliament, the Senate and the People's Assembly, and they appointed a retired justice of the Court of Cassation to amend the Constitution 1971. The important thing here that the Supreme Council announced that the Egyptian international commitments still remain, and this is especially concerning the Treaty of Peace 1979 concluded by Sadat between Egypt and Israel after October 6 War 1973. On the criminal side, with regard to the corruption perspectives, the Egyptian General Attorney Abdelmegid Mahmoud start requesting the freezing assets of most of the important samples and figures of Mubarak regime. Most of them are ministers. Right now they are under investigations and subjected to the criminal trial soon. One of them is the Minister of Interior. He will gonna face the criminal charges of murder, attempted murder, in addition to the corrupt acts like profiteering, money laundering, and stuff like that. And most of the ministers also had been under investigation, like Minister of Housing, Minister of Agriculture, etc. Also, he requests from the Minister of Foreign Affairs to contact the foreign government through the diplomatic channels in order to requesting the freezing of Mubarak wealth and his family as well. So, because it has been reported by the latest news that we cannot imagine these numbers of billions that had been smuggled and taken from the country, which lead to the collapse of the economy of the country. So, and the problem that he also, that we're gonna face, that Mubarak and before him Sadat tried to create what we're gonna call the political and the military establishment. A lot of money had been spent on that sector, and we cannot know, anyone cannot know how much money had been spent on the armed forces or what's happening in there, because the budgets of the army is secret, is disclosed, not subjected to any operational controls. So this is on the corruption side and the criminal side as well. Concerning the constitutional amendments and the latest constitutional amendments that had been done, the latest, the last few days, already the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces announced the suspension of the Constitution until they asking or requesting for Reform Constitutional Committee to amend some articles related to the Constitution itself. One of these important articles is Article 76, concerning the conditions of how to elect the president himself. The other important article is Article 88, which related to the guarantee of the whole and comprehensive control and supervision of the judiciary over both legislative and presidential elections. Also, another article the committee wanted to abolish is Article 179, concerning the emergency law and the emergency status. In order to, they try to abolish the article itself, but there is another debate right now. They want not to abolish the article, they wanted to eliminate the powers of the president using the emergency status. This committee submit the initial draft of these proposed amendments to the public referendum vote on March 19th, and it had been voted by yes. People said yes, about approximately 77% under a comprehensive judicial control, and 22% said no, and that followed by a constitutional declaration right now. But there is a debate still concerning this constitutional amendment, one of these important debates concerning Article 2 of the Egyptian constitutions, and I think that Muslim Brotherhood try right now to play an important game. Not a clean game, but it's a dirty game using this article. Even this article is not subjected to the amendments itself, but they start to talking about that in order to try to make some conflicts between peoples in Egypt, between Muslims and Christians, as this article stated that the official religion of Egypt is Islam, and the official language is Arabic, and the Islamic law is the main source of law. So already Islamic law, as I did last week, I gave a presentation about that, and I said that Islamic law is a main source, and this article, I said that we proposed an amendment to rewrite this article for the misconception and the interpretation, because Islamic law is not applied in Egypt, even in most of the Arabic countries except in Saudi Arabia. Just Islamic law applied in the inheritance and marriage issues and personal status and stuff like that, but they try to, the Muslim Brotherhood try to play with the language of the article itself in order to make the public opinion, or to make some destruction and the public opinion concerning a conflict between peoples in Egypt, Muslims and Christians. All of you can see that the Muslims and Christians are standing together in Tahrir Square, defending the same main concerns of the revolution, which is the regime change, democracy, justice, including economic justice, human and civil rights, rule of law should be applied on equality principles. I mean, this is one of the debates right now is before the constitutional jurists are trying to write a proposal about the rewriting of this article in order not to make a misconception to anyone about Islamic law is the main source and Islam is the official religion. About 80%, as Professor Emmert said, is Muslims in Egypt, and about 10 to 20% are Christians, and most of them are enjoying their freedom of religion, as Egypt is essentially secular but have a freedom of religion to anyone. Also, latestly, some institutional reforms had been realized within the individual investigations taking place right now by the Attorney General to determine how corruption converted or turned into a money laundering, and how Egyptian economy will gonna be affected, and the collapse will gonna be happen to the Egyptian economy if we will not try to put most of the corrupt samples in prison or in jail or under criminal investigations. Even when Mubarak resignated on February 11th as an historic day of Egyptian history, he, till his last minute in the Republic, he committed a constitutional infraction by delegate his authority, or not delegate, or when he announced that the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces will lead the country. Already according to Article 84 of our Constitution, that stated that in the case of the vacancy of the presidency, the Speaker of the House should act as the president for 60 days until the election has taken place. And in case of the dissolution of the parliament itself, the president of the Supreme Constitutional Court should act as a president. One of the other things also concerning the constitutional amendments, and I'm against at all with it, that they said the Egyptian president, or the new Egyptian president who's going to be elected should not enjoy a dual citizenship and should not also marry non-Egyptian. And I don't know to what extent they trying to do. I mean, it's kind of intervention in the personal interference or personal freedom, or I'm not sure if it's going to be a game of the Constitutional Reform Committee to saying this kind of things that you should, even Mubarak is, if they try to do that, because in order to guarantee a loyalty of the president, we can say that Mubarak is an pure Egyptian, his wife is an pure Egyptian, his sons are, and I can say they sell the country at all. So I don't know what are their purpose from this amendment related to the conditions of the presidency candidate to be the president of the republic. Finally, I can say that Egyptian people have been influenced by American and Western ideals reflected in the United States Constitution, but at the same time, they are affected by the similar Islamic values and Islamic principles, which are reflected in this drive for a change. And I can say finally that the rest of the story is not well known because events are still unfolding. We are not known what's gonna happen the next step, who will gonna be, we don't know what's gonna be the legislative election are gonna take in place or the president election. They announced that the legislative election maybe will gonna take place in September, or we don't know exactly what is gonna happen, but the thing that this revolution represents a very good mark in the Egyptian history since the revolution of 1919. We didn't have such a revolution since that date. We didn't have such a people gathering and standing together, asking for justice, asking for democracy, asking for their rights, asking for the freedom of thought, freedom of speech, how to speak, how to say no to the regime and the corruption, and how to stop. So it's really a good symbol in the Egyptian history. And I'm hoping that also happened to the whole Middle Eastern regime. And this is, I can say that Tunisia is a start, and it's make Egyptian people to be more encouraged and do this revolution. Hope that happened in Libya soon, in Syria, and in the most of the Arabic region, because they need to be free from the dictator leadership. Because no one can imagine that in Egypt, for example, that we live under 30 years of dictatorship. In Libya, they are live under 42 dictatorship, and no one can say no. If anyone can say no, they gonna see they gonna see a hell if they say no or they oppose to the regime itself. So hope hope what's happening right now is good and complete it and keep it forward to be a good thing. And wishing luck for the all Middle Eastern countries for their revolutions. Thank you.
Well, this is your turn now. We've been speaking long enough. Yes, please.
You talked briefly about the freedom of the press, and you said that people can criticize the government, but then you qualified that, and I didn't understand what you said.
Yeah. Having visited many countries around the world that do not have a very good track record for freedom of the media, I have sometimes found countries where for a international Western observer, it seems as if there is a fairly open and vibrant discussion. But that's happening in English. And that's not accessible to the large majority of the population. They don't read these papers, right? So what you would have to distinguish is there a genuine open discussion amongst the people and in the language that is spoken by the people? So it gives you an impression of freedom of the media that is not actually true.
The world has this impression that it's not really accurate.
Yeah.
And then I have two more.
Well, let me add to that. I was in Egypt during this the revolutionary times, and I think this was maybe 3 or 4 days before the revolution. And the Al-Ahram edition in English that Frank mentions had 2 pages, and those 2 pages were devoted to whether the Tunisian model is relevant for Egypt. There was, on the left, as I recall, a journalist said that's relevant for Egypt, and the one on the right said it's not relevant for Egypt because of historical reasons and so on. So they predicted the revolution. So in those kinds of newspapers, it's indistinguishable from journalism in the United States, but it's confined to less than 1% of the population.
Yeah, I think the situation in Libya is characterized by an uprising primarily of segments of the military, and then a group that we could call tribal fighters, who are obviously there. I think the Libyan society, much more than the Egyptian society, is characterized by tribal loyalties. You don't have that problem in Egypt. The people just get in the way. No? And since it's these fighters do not wear uniforms, they're not distinguishable. They say, okay, here are the troops and this is the civilian population, so we shoot these guys and we don't shoot those. They fight out of the residential areas. They hide between the houses. And so Gaddafi's strategy was indistinctly bombing and shooting everyone in those tribal areas. And that's why we had to get involved in a way. The speed with which we got involved, of course, also shows that Gaddafi didn't have too many friends in the West. Assad is also shooting people, maybe on a smaller scale, still in Syria, but there's no talk about going in there and stopping that. So,
Last question. You didn't mention anything about Morocco and Saudi Arabia, and I wondered if you could talk about those two countries and what's going on there. It relates to the rest of this and has to
Well, first thing I have to say is I haven't been to either of those 2 countries, and I prefer to speak about places where I've recently been and so on. So my opinion about Morocco and Saudi Arabia is informed from what I read in the newspapers from people that I talk to. So you have to just understand that I'm certainly not an expert on these countries. And in Saudi Arabia, we did have some demonstrations. That was really interesting, I thought, because in Saudi Arabia, the population can largely be divided into 2 groups, and there must be a third group, I think, that we didn't really realize. Namely, the 2 groups are the foreign guest workers who do all the menial labor and basically keep the whole system going, and then the Saudis themselves, who don't do an awful lot of work because there is enough money going around anyways. And it seems there is that third group. You know, the Saudi royal family is very large. There are several thousands of princes and all their families, and they appropriate the largest percentage of the oil wealth. And then there must be a population that is not satisfied, but that is indigenous. And the question is, of course, can the Saudi government pay these people off, just sort of throwing whatever money and benefits at them? So basically say, okay, here's a new flat screen TV and a new whatever, go home and shut up and be happy that you're here because it's, after all, a very good life? Or are these people going to say at some point, look, there's still something wrong, because if you are one of the royal family, then you just get whatever you want. Maybe my colleagues want to add to that. There was an interesting feature. Something happened in London this year, and it was reported in the London Times, and I hadn't seen and heard about that before. During Ramadan, which is the fasting month in the Muslim world, and that's not necessarily popular amongst Muslims who don't want to fast, because you can't eat or drink during the day. And in fact, in a country like Saudi Arabia, you will see all the restaurants and shops closed during the day, so that you could only do that at home. So if you are not participating in the fasting, it's not a lot of fun to be there in Ramadan. So apparently a good number of these princes preferred to spend that time in London. And what they did as part of their entertainment was to do street racing with their Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And you can't really do that in London during regular business hours. So they did that at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning, racing their Ferraris down basically public roads in London. And they got speeding tickets at first, you know, and they just smiled and paid a £1,000 speeding ticket and did it again the next night, until, and that was then reported by the media, that the London police thought, okay, we'll help you, and they started confiscating the cars. Now, how do you get your Ferrari from Riyadh to London? And you can be sure that they didn't bother shipping it. You know, they air freighted these vehicles. So they get in their 747 private jet, they drive their car into the garage downstairs, and they fly for their vacation to London.